So hello everyone. Welcome to our Indie Authors Live series. Today I'm going to be going live with Nicole Platania. I think that's how you say her name. Who is the author of The Curse of Ophelia, as well as the second book, The Shards of Ophelia, and then the upcoming Trials of Ophelia. So I'm going to invite her now. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how do I show my, oh, there we go. That might work. Ah, okay, let's see if this will work. Perfect.
There you go. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me today and
Yeah,
taking
thank you
some
so
time
much
out of
for
your day.
having me.
All right. So, as I was saying, so how do you say your last name?
Platania.
Platania. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's
I
been
was just showing off.
mispronounced by everyone, so that's okay.
I was showing off this beautiful, beautiful naked hardcover. This is how it is on my shelf.
Oh,
Because I
yeah,
just
you
think
got
it's
to
so
show that
pretty.
side.
So let's just jump right into it. So tell us a little bit about what made you decide to want to be an author and what your path to publication was.
So I've always wanted to be an author, but I never thought, when I was younger that it was a actual career choice I could make. I always wanted to write books and I always did write when I was younger. But then when I had to, pick a major in college, I was like, okay, what's practical? And I majored in something else and kind of put writing on hold for a little while. And then when the pandemic hit and everyone was at home, I was like, I should give this a shot again. And I decided to start writing again. My roommate at the time was studying for the MCAT. So she
Mm-hmm.
was always really busy with that. And I was like, okay, I need something to keep me grounded and something to look forward to every day. So I got back into writing and I didn't really know much about indie publishing at the time. So I started with traditional publishing or with pursuing that and with querying whatever I was writing at the time. And I did that a couple times. And then it kind of got to the point with The Curse of Ophelia where actually it was my dad. He just said, well, like, why wouldn't you just self-publish it? Like, why wouldn't you just do it yourself if that's an option? And I kind of listed out my reasons and realized that they weren't very good reasons to not try it. Um, and I decided to just take the leap then with self-publishing it.
Awesome. Awesome. We have a lot of lovely people joining us and saying hello. So thank you guys for joining. Make sure you guys share, like, do all that fun stuff so other people can chat with us tonight. Um, and I think that, that's kind of a common theme is, sometimes you do try to go the trad route, right? But there's just so much more involved, right? And the timeline is not yours. And so I think that that's like a big push for indie too, is that like you can publish on your own timeline, like as fast as you can write and get it edited, like go ahead.
Yeah, there's so much more flexibility with it. The idea of being able to control your own deadlines is really nice. Like I am on a deadline right now, but at the end of the day, I know if I'm not going to make my deadline, I can push it back a week or two, or
Right.
if I need to, because I'm only really answering to myself at this point. It's not going to an editor on that day or anything. So that flexibility is really nice. And I know that that's really appealing for a lot of people.
For sure. So tell us a little bit about what you enjoy most about writing in this genre.
With fantasy romance or romantic fantasy, I love that it's a mashup of two things because I've always loved romance books. I love just love stories in general. Even like in like Disney movies, like Tangled is one of my favorite movies. Just watching like them fall in love and like something as simple as that. And then I love like the big epic scale love stories too. But then being able to also have all of the magical fantasy elements, being able to escape into another world, have magical creatures. If you want dragons, you can add dragons into your book. Like there's just so many different things that you get in this genre, and that's what I really love about it.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, romantasy has just like taken off. Like, I don't even
Yes.
know, like
Off.
it's definitely taken off, and I mean, Book Talk loves it. So, I think that that's a great genre to write in, but then it's also pretty saturated. So then you have like these unique elements that you add in your book and Curse of Ophelia that just make it different, and like make it stand out. Um, and as I was kind of thinking about, like, okay, like now I know what indie is, right? Like, and that sort of thing. And just trying to kind of, I mean, basically on TikTok is where I found probably you and like everybody that I probably interviewed so far. But it's like these books, like, that I choose to, interview these authors. Like, I really, really like this book. Like, that's something I think is really great when, like, you have such a saturated genre, and then there's just something so different about these characters. So that's really awesome. As far as your writing process, do you plot? Do you outline? Do you quilt? What do you do?
It kind of changes for every book. I'm definitely an outliner, I'm a plotter. What I'm working on right now, the book I'm working on right now, is challenging that because I was quilting a little bit with this one where I knew so much of what was going to happen and had to figure out the how we were going to get there. But definitely at the end of the day, I am a plotter. I need to know where I'm going at least, and I don't necessarily need every detail to be figured out, but I have to know the end destination, and it might change along the way, but at least have an idea of it when I start, or else I feel like I am just a loose cannon and I won't make any progress in a scene if I don't know where it's supposed to be going.
Mhm.
But I like to have a little bit of freedom at least.
No, yeah, and I think that, like, that's kind of a cool way to go about writing too, right? Because it's like, okay, like if you're going on a trip, like, I know that's like where I'm going to end up, but like how I get there, it could go so many different ways. And I mean, I'm sure with developmental editing and stuff like that, maybe you do change the way that you get there depending on how that person, kind of gives you feedback and stuff like that too.
Yeah, the editing process can really just tear up a manuscript, but at
Hmm.
least in the beginning, I like to have a little bit of structure.
Yeah. What do you need in your writing space to stay focused? What helps you kind of stay on task?
I'm when I'm in the zone to write, I am lucky, I'm fortunate that I can just focus on it if I am like really in the mood for it that day. But I am definitely like I'm a beverage girly. I need to have my coffee, I need to have my water or wine or whatever I'm drinking, probably three different options on the table, maybe some snacks too. I normally play music, but it'll depend. When I'm drafting, I'll kind of just listen to whatever I'm in the mood for. But when I'm editing, I can't have music with words. I listen to my friends' like fantasy playlist all throughout editing trials. Like I listen to that so much, and it's just fantasy soundtracks. I can't have words in my ears.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. Um, and what kind of gets in your way when you're writing? Like, what's your kryptonite?
In terms of scenes, battle scenes are definitely the hardest to write. I think because they have to be so choreographed and
Hmm.
so orchestrated, and you need to have constant movement because no one's just going to be standing still in the middle of a battle. So you have to have constant movement, but you also, at least for my books, because my books are really character driven, I need to know what the character is feeling at the same time as having movement. So it's a really precarious balance to get, and those definitely take me the longest. Um, they're never good in my first drafts. They are such a mess, and as I go on, I spend a lot of time refining those, and that is something I'm going to continue to work on because they're really hard for me.
I think it was on TikTok. There's like this person who is like actually like posting like videos about like different kinds of fight scenes and like different sort of things, and like the actual like anatomy and like choreography of it. And like she was just like, I'm doing this because authors sometimes like write in a certain way that like it's not realistic to me, and I will stop reading the book. And I was like, wow, like I never felt that way, but you never think about that until you actually have to write it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that like adding all those kind of things and remembering, like you said, like there's movement, like you're not just ever standing there when you're in a battle, like those sort of
Mhm.
things, and like and how that would work, like how does it end too, right? Like
Yeah.
who deals the killing blow? What does the killing blow look like? That sort of thing.
Yeah. And I watch a lot of Game of Thrones, which
Hmm.
is it's one of my favorite shows, but especially when I need like some epic fantasy inspiration, I'll watch Game of Thrones and because when I'm writing, I see it as a movie in my head and then I just describe the movie. So watching really well produced battle scenes definitely helps me.
It's cool. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next part of the interview. And we're just gonna talk about Curse, just in case anybody who's joining has not read this book. We're not gonna do any spoilers for the rest. So we're gonna talk about this one. Um, so if you had to describe Curse of Ophelia in one sentence or less, what is that sentence?
Okay. I don't know if my elevator pitch is only one sentence, so let me think.
It can be a run-on,
Um,
that's okay.
okay. Great, that's how I talk. Um, so a cursed warrior goes on a quest with her found family to try to find the boy she loves who disappeared 2 years ago and restore their war-torn warrior clan to glory before her curse takes her life, but ends up exposing political schemes and ancient prophecies along the way.
I
That's
don't know if you could
that's
have a better pitch than that. If that doesn't make you want to read the book, I don't know it
I've written it
will.
in a lot of TikTok captions and Instagram captions.
Well, it sounds like it was definitely well thought out because we have some people saying agreed it was amazing, perfect summary. So
Thank you, yeah.
awesome. Um so I know that you said, it's challenging to write battle scenes. Is there anything else challenging about writing this series in particular that you found?
Well, something that looking back on was difficult with the first book was like there were places that I had to hold myself back because I know where the series is going and I know what's going to come later. And there are certain things that you really just want to put into like that first book, but you know that the magic is going to be so much better if people read it in book 2 or 3. And it'll lose an effect almost if you like give things away too early. So that's definitely a challenge with book 1. This is a really big world, and I knew all of these details about all the different warrior clans and things, but I chose not to put that all into book 1 because it didn't necessarily affect the plot directly in book 1. It
Mhm.
would have been superfluous information that the reader didn't necessarily need, and it would have been felt like info dumping. And
Mhm.
that was a hard decision to make because I wanted to give the reader everything. I wanted to say, look how cool this world is. Like, it's unique. There's so much to it, but I didn't want to throw it all at them. I wanted to kind of space it out over time and let the reader really learn the world as the story goes on. So that was a hard decision, but for this series, I think I made the right choice.
And did you find that while you were writing, you were finding yourself holding back, or do you think that that kind of came like once you got into the developmental process?
When I wrote book 1, I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I really just wrote it
Hmm.
for that first draft. So I think later on, I was starting to think like, what should I add in? What should I take out? I wasn't thinking about it too much when I wrote the first one. It's kind of like some of us authors talk about it sometimes. Like when we were writing our earlier books, we were kind of naive in a really good way.
Hmm.
And now we think so much. And we kind of wish that we could go back to when we didn't know so much about writing and we were just doing it.
And I think that like I'm trying to write a book now, and I'm finding that I'm the opposite. I think it's maybe because I have ADHD. Like I'm thinking too much rather than just like writing it.
Yeah.
So, that's probably good advice for me to take, is just to kind of like get out of my head and just like write it, right? And just get your first draft down. It's probably not going to be great, but that's okay, right?
Yeah, that is always my advice. I mean, I know it's not like everyone is different. It's not going to be good advice for everyone, but at least for me personally, like I have to just get a first draft done. That is what I will always say is to just get it down. You can fix anything later. You can delete, you can add, you can do anything later. but sometimes you just need that full story in front of you.
Right, right. This is one of the most challenging questions that I found people have said. Who is your favorite character to write and why?
Okay, well, I know who everyone is gonna want me to say. Um,
Yes.
and while I love the boys, Ophelia is my girl. Like she is like as I'm getting into, more point of views and like adding more point of views and more context to the story, sometimes I sit down at my computer and I look at my little writing schedule and I'm like, I get to write an Ophelia scene today. Like I get so excited because like she's just the easiest for me to connect to because the story started with her. Like I knew her from the get-go and she is the story. So yeah, I she is always my favorite to write. And I love writing the other characters, but she's the North Star.
She's your favorite. Um, and so you did mention that kind of when you write, it's kind of like a movie playing in your head, and you see it and then you write it. So, I know that we also have obviously like these new, illustrated covers that have, characters on them. But if you had to fan cast your main characters, do you have anybody in mind?
Okay, this is the hardest question for me,
I know.
mainly because like I'm horrible at remembering celebrities' names. Um, but Madeline Klein is always who like I reference for Ophelia, in terms of like her appearance. But one of my readers the other day said Natalie Dormer, I think her name is. She was in
Yeah.
Game of
Yeah,
Thrones.
she was Game of
Uh,
Thrones. Yep.
is that yeah, I couldn't remember her last name. See, I'm horrible at it.
Well, you were right. Her last name is Drummer.
Um, which I think would be perfect. A lot of the people that I've seen that kind of remind me of other characters are older than my characters because my characters are in their early 20s. So a lot of the actors that I see that I'm like, oh, that person would be so good if they were like 10, 15 years younger and could like actually seemed like someone in their early 20s. Um, like for Cypherian, I always think of Sam Hewen
Yep.
from Outlander.
Highlander. Mm-hmm.
He is like to a T Cypherian in my head. Um, I think Freya Allen for Jezebel, she'd be good. Some of the other guys are hard though. I haven't really found perfect ones for them.
I think that's the hardest part with this question is because it's like you have like the idea in your head and you're just like, but I just don't know who.
Yeah, if I was like one day, if this ever got adapted and if I had any say in the casting, I think the attitude would be more important to me than the looks of the character. I would want them to be able to pull off how this character behaves very convincingly than like what they looked like specifically. If they had the wrong hair color, or if they like, I don't know, that wouldn't matter to me as much.
Mm-hmm. Um, and I know that we have a lot of lovely people on here. So if you guys have any questions that you have for Nicole, please feel free to write them in the chat. We can definitely get to those after, after we are done here today. And so we'll move on to the last part, which is my favorite part, just kind of getting to know you a little bit as a person and kind of just who you are outside of being an author. So what do you like to do other than writing and reading? I'm gonna put that in there because we all know that you probably love to read.
Um, well, lately I've been watching a lot of reality TV. It's
Mm.
just like my favorite way to just turn my brain off is to watch reality TV. So, I watch Love is Blind, The Bachelor, Traitors, like Vanderpump Rules. I'm all over all of those shows. And when I want to feel like I'm still being productive, I tell myself that it's doing a character study because where can you find more outlandish characters than reality television? Um, but I also, I have a really great group of friends that I've known for nearly my entire life where I live. So we're all in our adult lives, just very busy, but we try to see each other as much as possible. And like they are really grounding for me. None of them are involved in anything to do with books, but they're so supportive. So it's really nice when I get to see them.
That is great. That is really great. And this is my favorite question. If you had to recommend some books or authors, who would those people be?
Oh my gosh, so many. Okay, I guess I'll say book titles because I feel like names are hard if you spelling. Um, okay, so well, I know that some of the people watching are fans of our little author Discord group, The Coven. So obviously, I have to shout out all of them. So we'll start with let's start with Long Live because I know well we actually a lot of us have books coming out soon, but I
Hmm.
know that you've talked to her or are talking to her soon.
Yep.
Um, so Long Live, Threaded, The Lost God. These are all like I'm naming the first books in the series, but there are many. Um, The Dagger in the Forbidden Air, Blood and Steel, Lunaria, Spark of the Everflame, and then a few, non-coven books who I am just obsessed with the books and the authors. The Lady of Darkness series is
Hmm.
very close to my heart. Um, and City of Gods and Monsters, which
Hmm.
actually has the third book in that series is coming out next week. Um, Both of those, I'm just in love with them. I adore the authors. Can't recommend either of those enough, also.
Well, I am happy to say that I can recognize probably about 75% of those books. So I feel like I'm pretty happy about that. Um, I'm about to read Forever Rain is the next book that I'm gonna read. So I'm very
It's so
excited.
good.
I'm so excited. But City of Gods and Monsters has been something on my mind that one of my friends got it and we were gonna buddy read it, but she takes a long time to
It's
go
a
read
long
it.
book.
And I'm just like, I can't wait anymore. I need it.
Yeah.
But awesome. So we have a lot of great recommendations too. Um, let's see. Have you ever thought about like any places or been to any places that kind of remind you of the world that you created?
So I was really lucky a couple summers ago. I went to Iceland and I had already written The Curse of Ophelia, but when I was there, there were so many places that I was just like, okay, wow, this looks like what I imagine this territory looks like. This looks like what I think this would look like. There were volcanoes there, ironically, so that is obviously very relevant. Um, so that was probably the most like just exploring that country. It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
It feels like you're in a magical world.
I've always wanted to go to Iceland.
Oh my
Like
God,
I see people go there like all the time, and I'm just like, "Ah, I really want to. I want to do that, and I want to do Alaska. Like
I've
both of
never
those
done
places.
Alaska, but
Like they
that
just
I
seem like
want to do.
unreal,
I know. I
right?
was everywhere we went. I was like, how does this exist? And like, I'm living in Los Angeles. Like,
Hmm.
that's nowhere near as pretty.
No, I relate to that. I live in Connecticut, and there's nothing here at all. Um, if you had to share some advice with aspiring authors, I know that you kind of talked a little bit about some things that maybe you wish that you had done differently, but someone, who's kind of starting out or, is kind of struggling, what advice would you give to that person?
I think I'm going to go back to finish the first draft.
Finish the first
I
draft.
know that this doesn't work for everyone, and some people have to edit as they go, and some really successful authors, like, that works for them. That's their process. But if you're like me, finish the first draft, you can edit it later.
Hmm. That's
That's
good
my
advice.
I know it's
Somebody
hard.
asked
It's
a
hard to get there.
question. What'd you say?
It's hard to get there, but
It is hard to get there. Chaotic Couch Reads asks, what is your next book or series idea? Like, are you working on that? Do you have something?
I have a few different ideas that I have three series that I'm definitely gonna write. I think I know which one is going to be next, just because a lot of things that I want to write are either take place in the Curse of Ophelia world or are related to it somehow. Um, I think the next one I'm going to write though and really dive into is going to be it'll focus on characters in one of the other clans, and we won't ever meet them in the Curse of Ophelia series, but
Mhm.
it will somehow be related to it. To you won't have to read the Curse of Ophelia, you won't have to know anything about it, but it'll be related loosely. Um, and I think it'll be a little bit more fantasy romance, where the romance is a little more prominent, whereas the Curse of Ophelia is definitely more, epic
Hmm.
fantasy with the romance involved, like romantic fantasy. So from what I'm gathering about it right now, I feel like that's the way it's going to sway. Um, but I do still think it'll be, a longer series that has lots of characters, lots of side characters involved, and their point of views and things sometimes, just to still give it that whole epic feel to it.
Well, we have some very excited people in the comments saying someone said three, and then someone else said oh and yes. So they're very excited.
Yeah, I do have
Um,
I do have three in mind right now. And then there are some other things that I'd like to do, but pretty much all of my ideas right now tie into the Curse of Ophelia world, or a spin-off of it somehow, in ways that I can't really talk about yet. Or I don't know, I'd love to do like a next gen series from the Curse
mhm.
of Ophelia, and like kind of how Shadowhunters does it, where
Yeah.
it really focuses on like the kids cast. I think that would be really fun.
I
So
I
we'll
love that
see.
you mentioned Shadowhunters. That's like my ultimate favorite book series ever. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I would
And
love to keep, I love how she has just expanded that world in
yeah.
different ways. I That's my goal.
And honestly, I like the Infernal Devices better than the Mortal Instruments. Like
Oh,
somehow like
same.
I was just like more into like what was going on. Like I love Will and I love Jem like forever. So I don't know, something about them, like that trio just like
Yeah,
got
I
to.
really love the Infernal Devices. I really love the last hours with,
Yep.
but I mean, I don't know. The Instruments is my least favorite of all of them.
Yeah.
I haven't read Chain of Thorns yet. I have it. It's like right up there somewhere. And I'm still halfway through Queen of Air and Darkness.
Hmm.
Um, but Emma and Julian have my entire heart. And I didn't even read them until last summer. And when I read them, I was like, oh my gosh, Emma and Ophelia are like the same person.
Hmm. It's
um,
funny how like you read books and you're just like, oh, like, it's maybe I like that character for a reason, you know?
yeah, yeah, it was
Because I
crazy.
think a lot of the time authors I hear like their main characters like they mirror them a little bit, and it's kind of like there are pieces of either them or something that they're trying to work through that the character's working through. Is that true for you at all with Ophelia?
Yeah. So
On a
Ophelia,
different level, obviously you don't have a curse that you're
yeah,
gonna like.
no, Ophelia was definitely like a very healing process for me to
Mm,
write. With things that I didn't know I still needed to heal from, things that had happened earlier in my life, like years before.
mm,
And I was like, we're done. And then Ophelia came to life and was like, never mind, we're going to reevaluate some of these things. And I think that's also part of why I connect to her so well, and why she's so easy for me to write. And it's definitely true with her. There are definitely pieces of me and all the characters and things that I relate to them through. And I know that my next FMC that I write is going to be a really personal one, and I think that's part of why I'm leaning towards the series that I want to
mhm,
do next, just because I'm like ready to tackle that
mhm.
thing inside of me. I'm ready to put it on the page. So, and I think hopefully people might see themselves in it too.
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate most, like that I've kind of, that by talking to, different authors that I've been able to kind of see is like that just makes because usually I do a reread of the book of the first book at the very least, like before I interview, just so I can see it in a different light after the first time I'm reading it and things like that and process in a different way. And then when I hear stuff like what you just said, I'm just like it just like evokes that emotion about like okay, like this is more than just a book, like it's more than just like something enjoyable to get lost in for a little while. Like this actually is a piece of somebody that they're like putting themselves out there, and I think
Yeah.
that that's difficult too, is like when there are characters when it's like a darker romance or something dealing with mental health or things like that, like for the author to say, hey, like that's how I processed my trauma. That's how I processed my emotions. That's a beautiful thing. And I
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it can be tough not like, I don't know, just sometimes you see online people criticizing a character and you're like, well, the
Hmm.
author might have related to that and other people might relate to it. Like I know personally, I see a lot of like myself, I relate a lot to Nesta Archeron in A Court of
Hmm.
Silver Flames and she gets shredded apart on the internet.
He does.
And it's like every time I see someone criticizing her, I'm like, well, that hurts. So, and I didn't write that character, but I
Right.
relate to her.
And I think that's a piece too is, like, something, I mean, obviously I'm a book reviewer, right? I review books and things like that, but I'm always very, I mean, I'm a mental health counselor, so maybe that's part of it too, but I'm very wary of like the words that I use. Like even if I didn't like something, like I'll still write a review or I'll still feature it on my page because just because I didn't connect to something, it doesn't mean someone else can't connect to that and it can't help them in that way. And you should at least it's like right, like get like all the information and then you can choose whether to read that or not because maybe that's something that you need at that point. So I really
Yeah,
like that.
you can critique and review a book for
Yeah.
sure without hurting anyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, by no means should people not critique or review a book, but it's very appreciated when people choose their words carefully.
And don't tag you in negative review.
Yeah. Oh my
Like
gosh.
that's really horrible. Please don't do that.
I'm
Like,
seeing more and more of that too. Just more and more people on threads being like, got tagged in another negative review today. I'm like, poor authors. Like, give us a break.
I know, and like you said, like especially if you're pouring your heart into like this, like you don't just write a book. I mean, maybe you can, but a lot of people don't just write books for fun, and especially if you're doing, indie publishing, like you care enough that you are literally like, I mean, it's expensive and it takes a lot of effort because you have to market your own books. You have to, go through, you have to pay for all of the editing sweeps. You have to find the cover artist. You have to do all those different things,
Yeah.
and I think especially for indie authors, I mean, I know that, if we're talking about Sarah J. Maas, like she does get a lot of feedback from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
But especially like she just has like this huge massive fan base that's just always going to stick, behind her and support her, but indie authors don't always have that, and they put so much, into those characters and into that story and getting it out there for somebody to read, to to be tagged in a negative review just sounds like that would like really just break my spirit. Like I
No,
don't
that's
know.
exactly what it is. It can kind of cause you to spiral a little bit
Yeah.
and like it can really disrupt. Maybe you're in like a really good writing flow or something and you just happen to
Hmm.
see that on Instagram and it's like you don't want that in your space. If you go on to a review site and you see that
Hmm.
there's a negative review, you're kind of going onto that review site with the understanding that you are going to see it, that you are
Yep.
going into the reader space. But when you're tagged in it, it's put into your inbox, then it's not a good feeling. And like you said, it's really grueling to be an indie author. There are a lot of days or weeks or months where you feel like, what is the point of doing this right now?
Hmm.
And that sounds really bad, but I think every author has that I know has felt that a lot. So it's important to voice, I think. Um, so you have those days that you're already questioning it, and then to have something like that pop up, it can be like, yep, that voice in my head is right. I
Hmm.
shouldn't be doing this.
And then, you have it's like we always focus on the negative, right? So like it
Mhm.
doesn't matter how many positive reviews you get or like, your arc readers and and those are in your Discord and things like that. That one negative thing can just completely, like you said, derail your groove.
Yeah. And you can be having a great day and all of a sudden you're just
Hmm.
plummeted down. It's part of what you sign up for as an indie author, but you don't really understand it until you go through it and experience it. And unfortunately, you know, the hard parts are just part of what you're signing up for, but the negative reviews in your inbox don't have to be what you're signing up for
Hmm.
if people won't tag you. So,
For sure. And so, I know at least one event of that you have coming up. But what kind of events and signings do you have coming up for for your books?
So right now I just have a Polycon. That's the
Hmm.
only event that I'm signed up for as of now this year. I might be trying to organize something with the more local bookstores or something in the Los Angeles area. Nothing's set in stone yet. So if anyone happens to be watching and is in the area, or if you're not in the area, definitely recommend signing up for my newsletter and following me on social media. That's where all updates will be posted and will be sent. And I do my newsletter monthly, so try to do a monthly wrap up of all the things.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them below. But The Curse of Ophelia is out now. Shards of Ophelia is out now. They are both on Kindle Unlimited. But obviously I have it in my hand, so you can also buy the physical copies. And when does Trials come out? Remind us. That's the third
March
book.
19th, so that's in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What's that kind of feel like having like your third book like come out in a couple weeks? Like what does that feel like?
Honestly, I don't think I've fully processed that there's going to be another one out. I think hockey players.
Hockey players,
I'm so
okay.
sorry. Sorry, I saw the question. Um, yeah, I don't think I've fully processed that there's going to be a third book out. The
Mhm.
sending the arcs out is always kind of a really big first step because so many of like my loudest readers are my arc readers. So I talk to them the most. And then a lot of times, when after the book actually releases, just kind of feels like it fades away for a little bit and it's like a slower trickle. So I feel like one of the big hurdles is the arc stage, which I now got that done, which has been really, really fun to get to talk to all my arc readers about the book. So I'm really excited for book 3 to come out. I think that it's gotten a really positive response so far from arc readers, and it really unlocks a lot of doors in
Mhm.
the overall story. It really takes us to that like epic fantasy place, I think. That was my goal, and I've seen some arc readers say that, so I feel like I maybe achieved that. And it really kicks the romance up a notch. So I think it's going to be really fun. I think that I know I've got a lot more planned for this year that I think will also be really fun. So I'm just really excited to get going. I feel like this is the first step.
That's wonderful. And maybe it just like went over my head. Is the third the last book or are there more?
No, there's more in the series. It's going to be a five like main novels,
Okay.
and then there's a novella in between books 3 and 4.
Okay.
So you'll find out a little bit more about the novella when you're done with book 3, and then once book 3 has been out for a little bit, I'll start talking about it and let people know what's going on.
Cool. We have another question. Do you prefer world building or character development?
Ooh. I I really like both. Like I get so excited over like writing lore for my world and writing random historical facts that no one cares about that aren't even going to make it into the final version. So I get like I don't know, that gets me going.
Hmm.
But since I'm such a character driven reader and writer, I think that's where it lies for me, but at least in my process, like the world building is something I can sit down and work on, whereas the character development, it has to happen over time. Like I have to get to know my characters over time, which is, why like when I talk about writing series in the futures, like I'm already hanging out with those characters in my head,
Hmm.
and I already, I have like their Pinterest boards going and random things like that. So I'm starting to get to know them now, but the character development process is just slower for me. I have to kind of let them tell me their story. So it's very different processes, and I can do them on different days, sort of how my brain's working that day. So that's not really an answer, but I like both.
And I think that that's something like you pointed out a few times, like how you are very character driven and like romance is like secondary to the plot, but like maybe in this another one of your series, like it'll be the opposite, and things like that. But like I think that's what I appreciated most about these books so far is that they are so character driven because like romance is great, but like I can read a romance or I can read like a smut book or whatever if I really want that. Like when I read fantasy, like I want it to be that, like you said, that epic fantasy. Like I want it to be character driven. Like I want to like care about the characters, and like I feel like the character development that you do in these books makes me care about the characters, and like that's hard. That's definitely hard. And you know, Chaotic Couch Read says the characters are layered, and that means a lot to them. And I think that's a great way to put it. Like there's so much to them, you know, and there's like you're like you said, like you're already hanging out with like other characters, but you hung out with these characters too. And like I'm sure that there were things that came out as you do your character development that you're like, well, I guess that's what that character's doing. I didn't really think that that's what they were gonna do, right?
Yeah, I'll get to a scene and they'll start telling me some story about something that happened when they were younger, and I'm like, oh, that's why. That's why you're the way you are, or something like that.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining me tonight. I hope that you had a wonderful time.
Cool.
And thank you everybody for watching and chatting with us. If you missed any part of this live, it will be up on YouTube tomorrow in full, so you can go back and watch it. But where can we find you, Nicole, and how can we continue to keep up with you?
So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads as everything's by Nicole Platania. It's the handle all across the board. And then from there, you can go to the link in my bio, sign up for my newsletter. I also have a Discord where readers say very unhinged things. So it's really fun in there. And then I'm on Patreon too, which is monthly bonus content from the Curse of Ophelia series where, you know, sometimes I'll ask people what they want to see. Sometimes I have an idea of a scene that I want to write. Last month we did a Valentine's Day scene. So it was like, imagine they have Valentine's Day in this world and here's how they would celebrate. This month I asked what people want to see and I got a really cute idea. So they post in the middle of the month, but that's really fun. It's a couple bucks per month to get the bonus chapters and then some other fun things here or there.
Cool. Cool. So in 2 weeks, we're going to have the third book of this series come out. So make sure that you guys put that on your Goodreads. And if you're not caught up, go ahead and read the first two. But thank you so much again. And I'm sure that we'll talk soon. Can't wait for you to get your third book out.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.